Alright, hiker family, so I've had a few questions about how I wired everything as an alternative to buying like a Gold Zero. So what I did is I built a little cabinet here on the side of the kitchen just to house all of my electrical as well as my plumbing, since I do have the water tank set up. So I have my main switch panel here, so that way I can toggle on any of my accessories and cut them off so that I don't have a parasitic drain on any of the accessories that I have wired up. It'll also give me a good readout on my battery voltage, so it's nice to just be able to glance and see where I'm at there. My newest project below is adding some RGB LED lighting for the kitchen to have some alternatives than just white. But normally this is screwed in place, but I've got it unscrewed right now, so you can see I've got all of the wiring on the switch panel, and that comes pre-wired for the most part. You don't have to actually do too much of this wiring loom. And then over here on the back wall, if I can get it to focus, I just have a standard fuse block. I think it's a 12-port fuse block, so you've got positives on one side and then negatives. So I have power coming into that fuse block just from my battery on the positive and the negative terminals. And the only other electrical items that I have plugged in directly to my battery is my charge controller. And what I did is I routed my charge controller just tucked away right here in this back corner, just to the left of the door. That way it's easy for me to see when I plug it in, but it's kind of out of the way and I hardly notice it. Just above the charge controller I have just a basic 500 watt inverter. I like this location because it allows me to hook up any kitchen items as well as charge the phone with it being on the top of that second shelf, and it's mostly out of the way. So basically the way that I have it wired is when I've just got it in storage, I have the direct 120 volt plugged in directly to my charge controller on the one end, and then the other end of the charge controller just goes straight down to the battery. And that's charging the battery whenever I've got direct short connections. Then my alternative option is when I'm out camping and off-grid, I'm using solar. So what I have is I have just a ZAMP solar connector here in the top back corner, and then just a flexible monocrystalline panel. I haven't decided if I want to permanently mount it, so what I have been using is I've got these heavy-duty suction cups. So I just put those down at opposite ends, that way a little gust of wind isn't going to blow it around. But yeah, basically I just use this ZAMP plug as a quick connect, and then all you have to do is plug in the panel and you're good to go. And the way that I've wired up all my solar connections is on the other end of that ZAMP plug here on the inside of the kitchen and the top. It's kind of hard to see. Apologize for the poor lighting. Let me get a light real quick. So I've got my charge controller, so directly off of that ZAMP plug, that's going into the charge controller. And then I've just got a heavy gauge wire going directly from the charge controller back down to the battery. And I actually have that going into my fuse block, not directly onto the battery. That way it's fused. And again, this is a nice option because having it up here, it's tucked away out of the way for most of the packing and storage that I'm going to do. But at the same time, it allows me just to peek in the trailer easily at any point in the day and see whether or not my solar's working. I can check my battery voltage, see which way it's all pushing or pulling the current. So that's my basic setup. A lot of options, but ultimately you just need one charger for your 110 down to the battery to trickle charge when you have house power or at a campground. And then for the solar, you really just have a solar panel, the charge controller, and then that goes to the battery. And then I'm just using that switch panel so that I can run all my accessories off of that, such as my water pump, my interior lighting, all of that. And then additionally on this, the nice thing is you have the option to have it with a a cigarette lighter, or USBs. So that's another option for just being able to charge and run everything like that. And they make these switch panels in a various of sizes with 2 or 3 switches, all the way up to about 8 or 10. So plenty of options depending on what your plans are for the trailer, but hope that kind of explains it.